Good day and welcome to the very first edition of Civil Society Weekly, where we highlight issues relating to sustainable development goals. I'm Lillian Ezejeli and I spend a lot of time on social media. One thing I've observed lately is posts from a number of people complaining about the heat. But this complaint isn't restricted to the online space alone. Everywhere you go, everyone you meet, after greeting you, the next thing they complain about is the heat. Now, there's this joke making the rounds that someone went to hell and forgot to close the doors. It might actually be a joke, but really it actually leads us to something more serious. Years back, we were taught that the rainy season is from March to September and that the other months are dry season. But today, we no longer have wet or dry season. There's really no more distinction between them. We're no longer surprised when we have rains in December or January. And these are clear indicators that something is wrong with the earth and we need to fix it. I have with me a man who cares a lot about the environment and works to protect it. He's an environmental bioscientist with training in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency in building. He believes in the power of environmental education as key to a changed future, and this reflects in the projects he undertakes. One of such is a project on improved clean cooking stove in order to ensure the environment is preserved. My guest is the founder of and the executive director of Nature Cares Resource Centers. That's an environmental education NGO. He has also worked with a lot of organizations to create awareness about how we harm the environment through our actions. This environmental Voltron I've been talking about is actually called Toyin Oshaniwa. Welcome to the show, Mr. Toyin.
Thank you, Lillian. It's a great pleasure.
Did you see this movie while you were young? It's called Voltron.
Yeah, Voltron.
Yeah, the defender of the universe. So you're like defender of the environment. You are on Voltron.
If you say that, I'll be glad to take that as a compliment. And,
what
as the next mission for me.
Actually, you've started the mission already anyways. What makes you so interested in the environment and climate change?
For me, it's more like a passion. I believe without the environment, we really cannot exist. You know, one of the fundamental role of man on earth is to care for it. The nature does not really need us. We need it. And that's why we need to care for it. So my passion is to see how we can best use this environment for our own good, for our own future for our own generation.
You introduced something called the Green Library. What's that about?
The Green Library is actually a project, more like an educational project, trying to bring the young ones to limelight on how best they can learn about the environment and also how to change their thinking towards the environment. So the idea was to, one was to educate them about the environment. Two was actually to provide books for the school. So we call it Green Library. It's a way of actually refurbishing the school library, mostly the primary school, the secondary school library, so that they can learn more about the issues of the environment.
Okay, so most of us have actually heard about climate change, but for the lay people or people who have heard about it but really don't know what it's all about, can you tell us what climate change is all about?
Yeah, climate change has different names, but there's a one I'm familiar with in Yoruba. They say is Yopada Oju Ojo, for those who are Yoruba speaking. Actually, climate change is just a phenomenon that is threatening everyone's life. As they say, it's the most threatening factor of our own generation now. Climate change is simple layman term is change in climate.
Okay.
You know, we were taught in school weather and climate. Weather, the daily pattern, or climate is the pattern over a period of time.
Yeah.
These changes that we have observed is what we term as climate change. So climate change is simply change in climate.
Change in climate.
Yeah.
What's the relationship between climate change and global warming? Because they are usually mentioned together most of the time.
Actually, when you speak of climate change and global warming, there are two, I would say that it's the same issue. But global change or global warming actually leads to these changes we're talking about. Global warming, as we work global warming comes from increase in heat or temperature. So there has been this increase in the amount of temperature, atmospheric temperature, because of man's activity, mostly man activities, which we call the anthropogenic factor. Man activities has contributed to increase in these gases in the atmosphere we call the greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases, some are natural, but more have introduced some artificial ones. This increase in the gases in the atmosphere has caused this imbalance between what we release and what we can absorb. So this increased gases is what trap the heat from the sunlight because of the depletion of the ozone layer.
Yeah.
And this has caused about the warming of the globe. This warming of the globe is what brought about these changes in our climate.
So what activities of man actually causes the increase in the heat in the environment that causes global warming?
There have been many reports and many evidences based, mostly from, I was just recently from the fifth assessment report. We call it the fifth assessment report from IPCC, the body that actually authorized those statements or those facts, shows that man have influenced the earth system or the climate system. There has been more anthropogenic emission of greenhouse gases. I mean, activities that releases gases, either from the energy sector, from the transport sector, or from the way we cook or we utilize them. Okay. Mostly from the transport and the energy sector. We consume more of this crude, I mean, we call it the carbon stock in the soil, which is the crude oil. Yeah. So this burning of this fossil fuel or all this form have increased this release of gases. And many of them are actually based by man. So that's why we always say man have actually contributed to it than the natural factors.
So does that mean we shouldn't drive cars anymore, we shouldn't cook anymore? What alternatives do we have for the status quo?
Now, when these challenges started, there has been many interventions. How best can we reduce the effect of future climate change? In the sphere of climate change, we use two terms, so maybe that will help us. We use what we call adaptation strategies or processes or programs, and what we call mitigation strategies or program. Mitigation, what can you do to reduce the emission of gases? Or what can I do or what can we do to capture the ones that have been released? Yeah. So simple. Tree planting, for example.
Okay, we'll probably get to that later on. Okay. Next week is actually World Water Day. Yeah. Yeah. That's March 22nd. Yeah. But that aside, recently we've heard about the Mekong River that supplies water to the Vietnam people. The Mekong River has actually dried up, and we really don't have to go that far. Here in Nigeria, the Lake Chad has dried up. So we're having problems of our water sources drying up. Just recently, some women held a rally in Ikeja, revolting against the plan by the Lagos State government to privatize water supply. So it's like water, which should be a basic necessity, has suddenly become like a luxury that only the extremely rich can afford, or even one that the rich can't afford, especially if it's not available, like what's going on in Vietnam. So how exactly does this in any way relate to climate change?
Absolutely, yes. From the report also that came out, it shows that we will experience more water scarcity from the fifth assessment report. And if you notice, even last year in December in Paris, one of the agenda of the Nigerian government was to see what the world can do to save Lake Chad River. Yeah. As you mentioned also, the Mekong River. I mean, rivers are mainly one of the source of drinking water we have in our communities around us. The increase in temperature will actually bring about more drought system, evaporation of the water, but loss of water from the water body, and this will lead to a lot of droughts. So one is that the loss of water from the water body will lead to drought. That is one aspect of water scarcity. Another aspect is that as the ground is drying up, we should remember that the soil is rich with nutrients, so there will be increase in sediment, nutrient, or pollutant in the soil. So when we have excess rainfall sometimes coming forth, it will just wash out this water into the nearby rivers that we have, making the same water not potable or not suitable for drinking. Okay. Another factor is that the more the land will lose the cover over the lands, the plants, the trees, they are our friends. Not only do they help us in the absorption of carbon dioxide, they also help in the water filtration. So they have to trap this water to the soil and filter it so that we can have more water at the aquifer. But when these things are not there, then the water will be scarce.
So that means afforestation is another form of human activities that causes climate change and global warming.
So you see, this will continue if we don't do something. There will be still challenges of water scarcity because of these activities of man. And that's why we need to take steps to reduce this impact on us.
We'll get to those steps, definitely we will. But the very first time I became aware of climate change was in secondary school when we were taught about the ozone layer depletion. Now, when I heard about it, I mean, it came we were informed about this in scary terms. We were told that once the ozone layer depletes, then human beings will begin to fry or burn because we're going to be really close to the sun. There'll be nothing stopping the rays of the sun from getting to us. Yeah. How true is that? Is that the future we should be expecting if we don't change things?
To me, I guess that is not really a future. It's actually reality we're seeing. You said from the introduction that many people complain about the heat.
Yeah.
I mean, just to tell you, this is just something we are preparing to face in the future. In India, so many people die of heat wave. Even in the northern part of Nigeria, many people are suffering because of heat. When you have increased temperature of 40, 45 degrees centigrade. Of course, what else can we say? The ozone layer was designed by creation, by God, to protect us from the harmful rays. So it is a layer, we call it the O3 layer. The question is, the more gases released to the atmosphere, the more gases interact with this layer. It's more like borrowing more oxygen from it, taking from it. So you deplete it. The more you deplete it, the more it's exposed. So we are more exposed to more ray. And if we're exposed to more ray, of course, we will burn out. So I mean, if you recently look at this group of people, the albinos, if I put it that way, they are suffering the most because now they're more exposed to this ray. And you can see them actually reacting to those things.
Yeah.
So the question is, that's the future we might face, but we need to be careful.
Okay, so since we've been depleting the ozone layer, can we also refill the ozone layer? Is that possible? Are there activities that can
That's a good question. The question will be, the ozone layer can recover on its own. It's a natural process. So the question will be, we should reduce the activities that deplete the ozone layer.
And if we reduce these activities on its own, it's a
self-healing
process.
Nobody created it. It's a natural process. So nobody will go there and fill up the ozone layer with gas. No, nobody will go. It's just a natural process. So I believe it should be able to recover on its own.
On its own. Yeah. You, as someone who believes that everything that goes on in this life somehow is related to the environment and how we treat it.
Yeah.
Earlier in the year, you had this interview where you advised that rats shouldn't be killed because it's part of the ecosystem.
Okay.
And you also mentioned, and it was actually during the time when Lassa fever threat was at its highest. So why would you advise that we shouldn't kill rats? Because it's part of the ecosystem and in the long run it will somehow affect our environment and the climate.
I only advise that we should reduce the excess killing of the rats because these rats have been with us from generation, but we should understand that there's what we call the food chain.
Yeah.
The same rat that we kill is a food to other animals. So the question is, if you kill all the rats, their roles in the ecosystem is destroyed.
So does it mean that extinction of some animals can somehow indirectly affect the climate?
No. What we're saying is that if you extinct certain animals, you have broken the chain, the food chain.
And that affects the environment, but not necessarily the
Remember,
climate.
not all food can man consume directly. Just like the goat. The goat eat the grass. You don't eat grass. Not all grasses do we eat. We eat some grasses, like the rice and the rest. They're all grass family. But the goat eats some grasses, and you eat the goat. So the rat also eats some things that you and I need. And I was saying then in the interview that we should be careful that we don't bring about another environmental challenge or problem by killing all the rats. What we should think, we should be asking in that interview was that medically, people should think, when do we actually have Lassa fever? Always. In what month of the year? People should really ask questions. And January, February, it was so dry. The rats need food. So where would they go to? To the homes. But the question is that they've always been in the home. But then also we have the problem of the power supply. So many people were not preserving their food properly. So the rats they have access to those food.
So one thing always.
So it was more like an opportunistic factor that led to the break of the Lassa fever. And also people were killing the rats, and disposal, the way they disposed it was wrong. Throwing dead rats on the road is wrong, because you are just in a way multiplying the effect.
Okay, rats aside, anyway, let's get back to water.
Okay.
Now, how aware are Nigerians to climate change and the dangers of not heeding the warnings?
In terms of awareness, I won't say people are fully aware. We need to continue educating. That's one of the social strategies you can use. You need to create more educational program, more awareness program. Of course, Not everyone is fully aware, but everyone understands that there's been some changes in the environment. The rainfall is not as before. The farmer knows
Yes.
that there's a change in his crop yield or the way he's farming. The woman in the community who gets access to water in the river knows that the river is drying up. You know that your children at home are suffering from one effect of disease or the other. So everybody is aware there's a change in the
status quo,
yeah.
yes.
So the question is, there should be more enlightenment program to let people understand that, hey, we need to take a step backward, see what is going around, and see what we can do to reduce the impact.
Okay, so based on what you said, we're all aware that there's a change going on.
I would say in both in the local way or indigenous way, we are all aware there's a change.
Yet so far, we really haven't made conscious efforts to stop this change. So I think we are people who take measures if we're aware of the dangers. Most people know there's climate change, but they are not aware of the dangers. Now, if you tell someone, don't sin, because it's a bad thing, they really wouldn't pay attention to you. But if you tell them, if you sin, you will go to hell, then they'll pay further attention because now they're aware of the dangers of sinning.
Okay.
So tell us, what are the dangers that we are likely to face if we don't take care of our environment and take steps towards stopping climate change and global warming?
We are exposed to a lot of dangers if we don't take any proactive step. Like you said, one of the Sustainable Development Goal, action number 13, if I'm correct, is climate action.
Yes.
We need to act. If we don't act, we are going to be exposed to a lot of danger, both short-term and long-term.
Okay.
Let me just give you a very short one.
Okay.
If we don't act now, we'll be having more conflict.
Conflicts. What exactly has conflict?
In recent times, we have read in paper how the Fulani community or the herdsmen go around killing people in the communities.
Yes.
Remember, the Fulani are people that move from one region to another just looking for food for their cattle.
True.
And so when they move, they go to Benue or something, they go into the farmlands. I mean, it's just crop for the plant. But this farmer have done a lot to put the plant in place or the crop in place. So there's a conflict.
Yeah.
So if we don't do something, we're going to be losing more lives in Nigeria.
Wait, the farmers have planted and now the cattle rearers
are coming.
What has that got to do with the climate?
The Fulani herdsmen need the grass for the animals.
Yeah.
In the north, we have more drought, more desertification.
Oh,
The lands are drying up.
Yes.
Now the question is they have to move to find food.
Yeah.
And the food they can find are the farm products, the farmlands. So they go into this farmland and eat the farm crops. This farmer tries to defend himself and it's a conflict. If you are in Lagos State, you see every day thousands of northerners moving into the southern part of Nigeria.
Migrating from the north.
Why? They are losing their farmlands. So we are going to be having even urban problem, population problem, infrastructure problem. Also, all the food, most of the food we consume in Nigeria comes from the north. The meat comes from the north. So if we don't act, we're going to have issues of food insecurity. So the dangers are there. So it is up to us to act politically. Let the government, let individual take political will to act.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
I carry out activities that emit so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Probably I cook with firewood like people do in the north.
Okay.
And then ultimately it leads to global warming.
Okay.
There's less water.
Yeah.
My crops
impact,
die.
Yeah.
That's the impact. My crops die.
Okay.
And for that reason, the cattle can't feed. They are moving to the south to feed.
You go have food to eat also.
Which leads to conflict.
Okay.
So every single activity we carry out somehow in the long run. Meanwhile, people have been dying and complaining about the killings. Probably some of the activities, some of your own activity actually led to your killing because you have been emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and now it's killed crops. People are now coming, I get it. So so far we've been talking about the dangers, what causes climate change, the effects. Right now, tell us what can be done to stall this problem of climate change and global warming.
The actions or what can be done, we can say depends on which region we are looking at. Recently in Nigeria, there's been this project on the Green Wall project, trying to see how to do some afforestation program in the northern part of Nigeria. That's by saving the land. So those are some of the projects being done by the government. In Lagos State, there have been a lot of tree planting projects. So the question will be, we need to first of all think of what can we do to reduce the CO2 that we have in the atmosphere. That is mitigation process or approaches.
Yeah.
And those are like tree planting, protect the ocean and the rest, or protect the soil, because they are the natural reservoir to absorb the carbon dioxide. But for man also, we need to shift. There have been more on shifting to low carbon economy, less dependent on carbon fuel, like the fossil fuel, the petroleum, and let's think about how to utilize energy from natural environment, which we call renewable energies. So those are some steps that have been taken. I mean, if you go around sometimes, you see some place where they utilize the solar panel, solar energy from the sun. These are natural energy. It doesn't cause any damage. You have the wind. You have the even from the waste we generate in Lagos State. I mean, Lagos State, we generate so much waste. We can generate energy from that waste.
Yes.
And these are just some of the steps we can do. You talked about women cooking with firewood.
I mean, what alternative do they have? Firewood and
of course, I'm not saying they should leapfrog into a new technology, but there have been some modern, we call it efficient cooking stove that consume less wood. So the less wood you consume, the less tree you cut, the less you're exposed to indoor pollution, and the better life you have.
How can I cook with less firewood? You really can't.
The stove. No, you can. The stove is designed. If you look at the traditional way of cooking, you use the 3-stone fire system.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, it's not the fire that cooks the food; it's the heat that cooks the food.
Okay.
So when you put too much, it's open, so you keep putting a lot of. You are just burning the wood, and you are wasting energy away. But these stoves have been designed to converge the energy into a chamber.
That way you get.
So you use, instead of using 30 firewood, you use only one piece of stick, and the heat is being, in a chamber, and that's the heat that actually cook the food.
Yeah.
So it's more efficient, more hygienic, more safe to cook.
Okay, it's easy to say what people should do and all that, but now you are the executive director of Nature Cares Resource Center.
Yeah.
What are you doing as an organization that's passionate about the environment to stall the dangers caused by climate change?
And from the beginning, as I said, the Nature Care is more of it's an educational, environmental education NGO. So more of our activities is based on education, training, teaching, educating people, creating awareness programs. You said, what do we do also? We also advocate those new technology. I've used the stove before. I have one at home, and I cook with it myself.
Okay.
So the idea is to bring the information to the people. Information is power. The more you inform you are, then you change. So if people are not informed, they cannot change. So I believe what we have been doing more is informing the people, advocating about for policy change. We have been member of some group called PAPSI, the Policy Advocacy Partnership Project on Climate Change. This partnership have been working with the government, Lagos State government, to move the policy that will help bring these changes that we want to see.
That's interesting.
It's a continuous battle. As you said, I have to do more veteran work.
Yeah, you have to do more veteran work. There's more that needs to be done. We need to preserve our environment. And you say we can do that by planting trees, reducing the amount of carbon dioxide we emit into the environment. And we can do that by probably looking for alternative means of cooking, probably with electric stove. We should use solar panels.
Even the BRT system is a good system if we can enhance that potential, because if you can do that, it's more like reducing the amount of cars on the road.
Oh, it's called carpooling.
Yeah, carpooling.
You're reducing the amount of cars on the road, less carbon dioxide into the air. All right, that's interesting.
And less use of generator.
Can we really afford that? We don't have power in Nigeria, and people need to power their businesses.
Let's hope for the change that we pray for, and that the change will bring a better Nigeria.
Hopefully this change will come about so that we can have a better environment and survive, because as it stands, we can risk mismanaging our country, then run to other nations when there's a problem. However, where do we run to if we destroy the earth? Now, I'm having this mental picture of us from the earth, camped at the border to Jupiter, begging to be let in. I don't think any other planet will be willing to share, but even if they do, how conducive will it be for us, the people from the earth? We have only one Earth, and we need to make conscious efforts to preserve the Earth for ourselves and for the future generation. So it's been really nice talking with you, Mr. Toyin, once again. And this is where we draw the curtain today. Join me next week again for more interesting conversation. Goodbye.